out in the back. And just for the record, when we say stoned around here, we're not talking about drugs or pharmaceuticals or plant medicines. We're talking about just a beautiful state of bliss, which comes very naturally in high fields of consciousness. And we calibrated the room for tonight, and it's running about 785 in here. It feels really good, doesn't it, Brian? Really amazing. And it's a real gift to be in the space and feel the energy so strongly. Before I start on tonight's topic and channeling, I wanted to quickly share, and I'm going to channel right after I share this, from Yasmin, shared on Telegram. We just released last night a channeling. It was a private session. I do private sessions, if you don't know, with Judah, and they are so much fun. It's like my dream job. And in this one particular session, this young woman named Janet began channeling for the very first time, and it was completely unexpected. She was not expecting it at all. So beautiful. And it was just stunning. I mean, it seemed like she'd been doing it for 20 years, right? And it was such a high-level message. So Jasmine was responding to that. She said, I just had the most amazing experience. I watched an old video of Angie on a podcast where she and Judah said that everyone can channel. Everyone can channel. The one she's referring to is, if you haven't seen it, we'll put the link below for you. It's Julie Riesler's USU podcast. She explained how, and the podcast hostess just did it. That was Julie Riesler. She was being really brave and volunteering as a guinea pig to try channeling. So it looks like Janet in the video that was shared here did the same. I tried it too, but it didn't seem to work as easily for me. So I thought, probably I'm not in an alpha state as Angie spoke about. So I went to sleep listening to a Judah Treats, as I always do lately, and I kept asking in my heart, Judah, are you there? I guess I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, my teeth started clicking, and I heard in my inner being to let go. So I did, and suddenly a surge of energy went through my whole body, like literally blasting my chakras free from my throat to root. It was like an electrical current charging down my body, ending with an extra charge in my heart chakra. It was just like, wow, what just happened to me? I could feel them spinning and pulsating, she's speaking of her chakras, for quite some time, and there were tears streaming down my face. I feel like something big just happened. I was like, yes, that's something big. And tonight we're going to be talking about healing from adverse or painful religious experiences. And so one of the goals, the major goals we have in the Judah channel, is for you to have your own experience like Yasmin was just describing. Because one of the traps we can fall into with religion is allowing other people who are in the know to tell us how to relate to God or how to have a relationship with God. And then we just are living as outsiders, watching the pastors and the preachers and the spiritual teachers who are on the inside with God, have all the information, and we miss out on the joy of experiencing it for ourselves, and it can be very disempowering. So this is why it's so thrilling to me to read a story like this from Yasmin, because she has had a living, tangible, physical, real experience with the divine that will never ever be taken away from her. And no matter how much someone tries to convince her that it didn't happen or shouldn't have happened, she will never be convinced of that because it's hers. So it's so beautiful. And that's what we're here to do, to empower you. So Judah's never setting themselves up to be a god or a know-it-all. They're only here as a friend and a guide to open the door, create a space for you to have your own personal experiences with your higher self and with the divine. So let's hear from Judah, and then we'll dive into the topic, which is about religious abuse and trauma. And if you don't have a history like that, I would encourage you still not to tune out, because there are definitely going to be things in here that resonate for you. So we'll begin by hearing from Judah. Okay. Hello, dear and precious ones all around the world. It is our delight to be with you, even in this beautiful space called Shalom Hall. Shalom, which means peace. Peace, peace, peace. We are always in a state of peace. We're never troubled, never worried. We don't have problems. We don't have issues to work through. We are constantly in joy and in peace. Nothing moves us. We're not disturbed by anything going on in the heavens or in the earth. We have complete trust in divinity, in the wisdom of the infinite field of energy, of life force energy, which is God, which holds every molecule and every atom in the cosmos, in the universe, in the earth, in place. Holds the stars in place, holds the earth and the planets in their orbit, and never allows them to fall from the sky. This infinite, beautiful field of energy that God is beyond comprehension, beyond description, beyond labels, beyond words. It is the very life force which animates your body. You are an expression of this infinite field of energy. You are beautiful. You are perfectly imperfect. We are not worried about you in the least. Even on your very worst day, when you've done something that you wish no one would ever know about, even still then, we are not worried about you. We love you. We know that you are love. You are beauty. You are perfect. Maybe you step into an error, a misstep, because for a moment you've grown unconscious, or because you are in some sort of pain. But there's nothing you could ever do or not do, say or not say, that disqualifies you from your perfected state in your superconscious, your higher self. And the love of God is perfect for you always at all times. And nothing can separate you from the love of God outside of the thought that you might be separate from this love. And when you release that thought, you will be instantly in our presence. Our presence is real. It is tangible, not just in this room, but for those who will listen in other locations all around the world, not just tonight, but even in years to come. We are putting a fingerprint of our presence on this, even this video, even this audio transmission. Simply invite Judah, be with me, and there we are. Before you even finish the request, even before you finish thinking the thought, we are there. You can change the atmosphere all around you just by thinking our name and by calling on the archangels. And then you are infinitely lifted in your level of consciousness. You're never, ever, 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 ever alone. If you feel alone, or if you are in pain, emotional or physical pain, know we're there with you. And these are simply things laid upon you in the density of earth experience. But you can and you will break through them. And the pain presents itself, be it emotional pain, mental pain, or physical pain. It presents itself to wake you up, my dear, to get your attention, to draw your attention to what's going on in your inner being that doesn't belong anymore, that doesn't belong. And so you can give thanks even for the pain, yes? Pointing you back into your inner being to find your freedom. There are spaces in you that are untouched by pain and distress. And there is heaven, and heaven is in your heart. And when you have determined you are done with hell, hell also being a state of mind, a state of being, when you finally come to your senses and say, I am done with this, enough of this, and you keep crying out, pressing forward with intention and expectation, you will come into your heaven, your heavenly state of being. We are always working through this vessel and with you to elevate your fundamental sense of well-being, of joy, of peace, of happiness, of health, body, mind, and spirit. We're not tired yet of helping you. We're not tired. You're not bothering us. You're not bothering us. We're not tired of helping you yet. We love you. We love you. We love you. We won't rescue you from situations you create for yourself. Sometimes you must suffer through them a little bit until you're tired of what you've done to yourself. You're tired of what the ego conditioning is doing to you. And sometimes we allow this because we want you to set yourself free. To set yourself free. We're not going to take away your power from you. We're going to empower you to set yourself free, to be in love, to be who and what you are. There's going to be a lot of wisdom flowing here through tonight. We integrate more and more and more with this vessel. You don't know, you don't see. Well, maybe you get glimpses from time to time of all the work that she does when she is alone, all the work she does with her partner, all the work she does to surrender more fully, to surrender, to allow everything that is within her that's misaligned, that's of pain, that's of fear, that's of doubt, that's karmic in nature, that's negative and painful in nature, to be surrendered, and more surrender, and more surrender, and more surrender. And as she does this, we are lifting, elevating her state of consciousness into highly enlightened states and integrating more and more and more into who she is and expressing ourselves more and more and more through her personality, through her words, through her singing, through her teaching, through anything she chooses to do. Yes? And this is what it means to be enlightened. We are the vessel's higher self, and we are also a vast collective. There are many others, even on the earth today, who are part of this Judah family collective. We are also their higher self. And we integrate more and more and more and more. So more and more of what she says in her normal, natural tone then is our speaking. Our speaking, our speaking. And we do not require perfection of her nor of you. Yes? Understood? Yes. We love to use human vessels, work with. Use is not the correct word because it has wrong connotations for some of you. We love to collaborate with this human vessel. It is a joy. And we love to collaborate with you. We're here and present. We were looking forward to this evening. Get ready, get ready, get ready to have your eyes open to some things you did not even realize were tripping you up and causing you to stumble in the way. We are here moving rubble out of the way. Rubble out of the way so you don't stumble on these these karmic blocks, these belief systems around religion. Understand, we love all people in all realms of time and space. All souls are beloved, whether they are identified with religion or not. They are beloved. There is no judgment in anything that is being said here. But we do love you enough to speak the truth to you. Yes? To speak the truth without mincing words. All truth here is spoken with love, with the anticipation of setting you free. Setting you free in all realms of time and space. And even if you have not had any experience or entanglement with religion in this lifetime, we assure you that each one of you has had many lifetimes of being religiously associated persons. And all of you have ancestors who have passed down false, limiting religious belief systems that have impacted your personal field. We're going to be, as this vessel speaks, we're going to be clearing your field, if you so desire, if you give us permission. Your personal field exists in the fifth dimension. It is your own personal Akashic record. In your personal field exists every experience you've ever had, every thought, every feeling, every impression, every sensation, everything you've heard, everything you've seen, in every lifetime that you've lived, in the past, present, parallel, and future lifetimes of your soul. We are going to work in this field as she speaks to clear anything that you become aware of that is a hindrance to your perfection, to your evolved state. Good. We love you. Good. Wonderful. Woo. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about healing from religious abuse and trauma. This is a really big topic for me. Yeah, it's been a lot that's gone into this for me. Some of you might say, well, this topic doesn't really apply to me. I was raised as an atheist. I've never gone to church a day in my life. I don't have anything to do with religion. But I encourage you to stay tuned, because some people can be religious or fundamentalist or legalistic about not being religious. Does that make sense? So you might detect this in yourself or others by the level of your resistance to religious persons and organizations. So some of you likely even felt triggered coming in this building tonight. And for those who aren't here, I'll just let you know that we're in this beautiful church called Myers Park Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, who is really striving to make changes from the inside out in religion. And one of the things I loved about coming here this week is there's a big, huge sign on the outside of the wall that says, "Open to all forevermore." And this I can align with, and Judah aligns with. Judah is open to all forevermore. Open to all, loving all. So if you felt traumatized, maybe nervous, anxious, even coming in the building, I relate, yeah? Or maybe you felt some other things stirring around. So in spirituality, in the New Age community, we can also sometimes recreate adverse, abusive, and trauma experiences in the New Age community, okay? And so these abusive and trauma experiences can be found in all traditional fundamentalist religions like Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism. All the major religions have fundamentalist, legalistic aspects. And then all of them also have very free, open to the Holy Spirit, open to spirit, and loving sex and aspects as well. Sometimes when we transition out of church, like me, and we come into the New Age world of spirituality, we can tend to think, oh, that's not going to happen to me again because I'm not in church anymore. So we have to be careful, because we can overlook the fact that there can still be abuse and trauma in the New Age community. There might be different lingo and different focuses and different practices like meditations, crystals, Reiki, channeling, but it doesn't mean that we escape the the possibilities of there being abuse and legalism and trauma. Okay? So if you have a history of religious abuse and trauma and you're unaware of its adverse effects, or you've not worked consciously to heal this part of your story, you may be unconsciously drawn towards unhealthier teachers and experiences in New Age spirituality. You might not even realize it. You might be unaware that you're being attracted to unhealthy spiritual teachers, New Age doctrines, New Age ways of thinking that are similar to the religious abuse that you experienced in the church or in traditional religions. So we're going to be treating all this towards the end of the evening. We're going to treat it with Judah. Whatever's coming up for you, let it come up, because whatever comes up is something that can be cleared from your field. And Judah's going to help us for sure with this. Now, also, many modern political parties and views on both sides of the aisle, have become hardened and religious and fundamentalist in their views. Okay? So one of the major challenges that we have in America right now is this hardening of the heart in both political parties. Hardening of the heart towards one another. Yeah? And the parties, both of them, they demand that party members demonstrate total devotion, adhere to the party's strict, polarized views, dogmas, and unconditionally toe the line and obey the leaders. Can I get an amen? Amen. Okay. Talking about both parties here, both of them. What's the answer? Rise above the entire circus. Remember, Judah taught us, we're not red, we're not blue, we're purple people. And if you haven't seen that video, you can find it on our channel. It's called Purple People. So in these political parties can take on a religious spirit and a religious attitude, and they can either subtly or overtly demand that members of the party vilify the other political party members. And so then we have enemies, right? And we know that's not love, yeah? Interesting, Jesus was crucified by who? Took two parties, the Pharisees, which were the religious, the legalists, and religious persons of the day, but they had to have a collaborator. Do you know who they collaborated with to get it done, to get him nailed on the cross? Yes. Pilate, the Roman Empire. So we need to really get this. If you forget anything I say tonight, the religious and the political will crucify the Christ in you. Will crucify the Christ in you. So this is really important that we extract ourselves from this. What's going on the scene? Because when we come into agreement with that, it's killing the Christ in the heart of America and in other countries too. Okay, the answer is to rise above the circus. Love all. Open to all, loving all, forgiving all, accepting all, love them all, forgive them all. The answer to everything is always to elevate our level of consciousness and vibrate in love. I would rather have dinner with a Republican that's an 850 or 950 on the level of consciousness, or a Muslim that's at 850 or 950 on the level of consciousness, yeah, or a Catholic that's at the level of, that's a very high in that love, joy, peace realm, or a Democrat in that realm. Doesn't matter to me. But understand that all the labels don't matter. What matters is the level of consciousness you're coming from. The level of consciousness you're coming from. Your party means nothing. If your level of consciousness is a level of 60, Hitler was a 60, his level of consciousness. But Winston Churchill, his level of consciousness was 500. And it only took one man, just one, at the level of 500, at the level of love, to end World War II. Just one. See, it only takes one person that loves. Okay? And you can't expect a person at 60 to be anything than what they are. This is fascinating. A Komodo dragon also calibrates at the level of 60. So here's what Hitler and the Komodo dragon have in common. A Komodo dragon will bite you, poison you, leave you for dead, and then eat you. Okay? So we have to look beyond labels and begin to discern what is the level of consciousness here. Is this person coming from fear? Are they coming from sadness and despair? Are they coming from anger? Are they coming from resentment? Are they coming from pride? Are they coming from humility? Are they coming from love? Are they coming from peace, from joy, from high service? What is the level of consciousness here? Because the labels don't mean anything at all. Okay? All right. So I want to take a moment to give a so we've kind of clarified here that we're talking about religion, but religion also, the religious attitude can also seep into other areas of our life outside of church, right? Okay, what is fundamentalism? It's a belief within religion, it's a belief that religious leaders and the way they interpret the Bible and the spiritual authorities within those communities are without error, they're infallible, they're inerrant, there's no error, there's no flaw, that religious texts should be taken literally, and that they are the ultimate source of truth and guidance. Taken literally, not questioned, and spiritual authorities also should not be questioned, and that there is no truth outside of those. So, fundamentalists, a lot of people are fundamentalist and they don't know it, okay? They often oppose modern, secular, liberal ideas and values, and they see them as a threat to their way of life. They feel threatened. So that's important to remember, right? When we're loving people. Remember in our guidelines it says, I'm going to stay aware of when people are coming from a fearful place and hold some compassion for that. Fundamentalists will tend to emphasize the importance of their own group and its beliefs, often viewing people as that are outside the group as being other or being threatening or people to be afraid of. And fundamentalism creates this feeling that everyone is either an insider or an outsider. And outsiders are dangerous to our fundamental well-being. Anybody felt that lately? Yeah. So an example of this would be racism in South Africa is based on fundamentalist ideas, right? So truly loving fundamentalists, and there are many, they will feel a sense, and I'm talking about people in the religious community now, they will feel an underlying sense of pity for people who aren't in their group, for those who aren't saved. And they'll worry, genuinely, sincerely worry that others might go to hell because they're not in the group. And this is really sad for them. It's a source of true sadness and suffering for them, this thought that people they know, their neighbors, people they work with, maybe their children, maybe their own parents, are going to burn for eternity in hell because they're not in the group. So there's a subtle message, right? We're the insiders, You are the outsiders, we're the haves, and you're the have-nots. Okay? So that either engenders a sense of pride or a sense of being afraid of the outsiders, or maybe even a sense of pity for people that aren't in the group. So I'm going to tell some stories tonight, and I'm going to begin a process from here going forward in the future in the Judah channel of telling some of the more personal and dark stories that I haven't shared up till now in the first 3 years of the Judah channel. One that kind of outlines this thing about this fundamentalism. My dad was a fundamentalist Baptist minister, kind of like from the Jerry Falwell camp. He went to Mid-America Baptist Theological Seminary, which is extraordinarily conservative, and then he went to Liberty University for his master's, which is also very, very conservative. And when I was in my mid-30s, I guess, my kids were still pretty young. My mom and dad came in town for Mother's Day, and we all went out to a nice lunch and we're celebrating together. And I had recently begun singing in a restaurant which served alcohol and singing secular music. Now, this was a big step towards freedom for me because I'd never allowed myself to do that before because of my religious background. And so once we got back to the house after lunch, I was just sharing some things with my dad, trying to be open and share some of my life with him and some of my feelings. And something I said was triggering for him because it wasn't following the dogma, the religious rules, the scripture, all of that. And he began to get really triggered and upset. And I pleaded, as little girls do, who want love and approval from their dad. I pleaded my case and just tried to be heard and to share my feelings, my heart with him. And it was met with more resistance, and he ended up shouting at me and saying, "You're screaming, your feelings don't matter, only the truth matters." And of course there were more words said. Of course what he really meant by that is what I believe to be truth, what I've been taught to be truth, is what matters, right? Yeah. And so he was enraged, and he got up and he walked out. He walked out and left the door hanging open and got in the car to leave to go back 2 hours to home. And my mother just stood there in the floor of the living room, stunned and shocked and torn and stuck in the middle, wanting to stay and be there, but she had to go with my dad. And I felt like somebody had literally put a cannonball through my chest. My whole heart chakra just hurt. And I wept and wept and wept. It was a very traumatic and devastating situation. So for persons like myself who came from religions with a high degree of control and really strict legalistic fundamentalism, fundamentalism can actually become a coping mechanism for your nervous system can be really dysregulated because you're constantly in a fight or flight state in order to make sure you don't do the wrong thing, that you don't offend God, you don't err from the rules of Scripture, all of those kinds of things, that you stay on the inside, right, good with God. And so this can actually cause a trauma response in the body. I was going to ask Chuck at some point to talk about the autonomic nervous system. Yeah. So the longer that you stay in a fundamentalist system like this, the more afraid you become of the outside world. And then, because you're afraid of the outside world, the more you will depend on that religious culture and their beliefs in the community to keep you safe and to be okay. And so for me, because I grew up in this and I never knew anything different, growing up in this fundamentalist world resulted in a lot of anxiety. Like, here's a good example. How many of you remember as a child being taught this? Did any of you say bedtime prayers? Yeah? And maybe you remember saying the prayer, "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." Most of you in here are actually saying it by heart. So imagine being a little tiny child. I remember being so terrified that I was going to die in my sleep. And so praying that prayer was like a matter of life or death. I wanted to make sure I prayed that prayer, because if I didn't pray that prayer, I might go to hell if I died in my sleep. So imagine the terror, right? And the trauma that causes, even just that simple prayer. And how many children have heard that? Sweetie, if you're able to, and you want to talk about autonomic and parasympathetic, let me know whenever you're ready, if you can. And if you can't, that's okay too. All right. Okay. So it's really common for people like myself who have had adverse religious experiences or grown up or been in extreme fundamentalism to develop anxiety, insomnia. Well, you can imagine a little child, you could develop insomnia as a very young child just from being taught that prayer, right? But you'd be afraid to go to sleep at night, afraid you might die in your sleep. It can cause depression, it can cause PTSD, and it can also cause borderline parts.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
What did you say?
I was saying, if you feel able to at some point, you could talk about parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous
system. Let me see if I can get grounded here.
Okay,
Do I
all
have
right.
a little bit of time?
Yeah, just let me know when you're ready. Okay, Chuck's wandering around stoned out and kind of tripping around, in case you're wondering out there in YouTube land. Okay, so it's common for people in these traumatic religious experiences. They can have anxiety, insomnia, depression, PTSD, and they can also develop borderline parts. And if you're not familiar with borderline personality disorder, it's where you have an extreme terror of being abandoned. Okay, so some of you out there, someone listening, you've been given a borderline personality disorder diagnosis, and you are not borderline personality disordered. Judah wants you to know that. You've been given that label, and it's a false diagnosis. The truer diagnosis is that you have trauma from fundamentalist religion. Okay, so unfortunately, if these folks are still deeply entrenched in their religious community, they might be referred to Christian counselors or therapists who also strictly adhere to the same belief systems that are actually being used to keep the person captive. Okay, like with me, when I reached out for help as a young woman, as a young mother for depression, I went to a Christian counselor because I was afraid to go to anyone else. I very carefully qualified the therapists that I saw to make sure they were Christians so they wouldn't challenge my religious beliefs and paradigm. And one of those actually told me, I guess it was in my 20s or 30s, that I would be on depression medication for the rest of my life and that I needed to accept that. When I met Chuck, he was the first person that ever said to me, he said right from the first appointment, "Oh, we can get you off that." And it set me free, and he did it. We got off. I do not take any medications at all now. And I had been off and on depression medications my whole adult life before meeting Chuck in my mid-40s. Okay, so I want to talk about when the depression, the onset of it happened for me at 16, because it is directly tied to religious abuse and trauma. Now, there are traumas with a big T, and there are traumas with a little t. And everybody here has experienced traumas in their life. There's big ones, like there are some people that have been raped or sexually abused, and by anyone, whoever it's been, that's tragic, and even more tragic when it's a pastor, a youth minister, someone you love and trust. Then there are traumas with a little t. okay, which are lots of traumas, a pervasive culture of trauma, and that's what I lived in and also raised my children in, okay? So when I was 16, this is what the depression began. It was directly tied to my religious belief system. I had been taught as a young woman and from puberty onwards that to save myself for the one man that I would marry and spend the rest of my life with, to save my kisses and all physical intimacy for that one man. And I was very much a part of what's sometimes called the purity culture. When I was very young, maybe 13, 14 years old, we were given talks and teaching about sexual purity, and then we were encouraged to sign written contracts that we would not have sex before marriage or engage in drugs or alcohol or tobacco use. And this was a written contract, a promise that we made to God. Okay, so we're playing the God card here. Yeah? And we do this in the New Age community too in a lot of ways. We play the God card, yeah? So there was already this, of course, I was a dedicated young, even as a young child, 7, 8 years old, I had a passion and a love for God, for Jesus, for the Holy Spirit, for the Bible. I mean, I started reading the Bible when I just was beginning to read. I was 7, 8 years old. And I had likely read the Bible cover to cover a couple of times by the time I became a teenager. So we signed these contracts, right? And had these big ceremonies. We were applauded by church leadership for setting ourselves aside for purity in this way. Some of the trauma started when I was in 8th grade. My next door neighbor, a friend of mine, she was 14, I was 14. We were friends, we were best friends. She had a beautiful little brother who was Down syndrome. Her name was Sharon. And as I got to know Sharon was a non-Christian. So I was a little bit scared about having a best friend that was a non-Christian. But she would go to church with me, so I felt better about that, and my parents felt better about that, and Sharon was willing to go to church with me. So as time went on, she began to be extremely nervous at church and even visibly shaking sometimes and crying and upset. She began to share with me her story. So this little boy that I thought was her brother was not her brother, but her son. He was 2 years old. So when she was around 12 or 13, she had gotten pregnant and delivered this little boy. And the little boy had Down syndrome and was mentally disabled. And she felt that she had caused his disability through her sin, through what she'd done. And she used to cry when I would take her to church and say, I'm afraid that God hates me and wants to punish me. And so all this deeply imprinted trauma on me about having sex, right? My best friend, I saw all the trauma she went through. She had sex and she had this child, and this child was disabled. And I mean, all this was imprinting on me how horrible it could be to have sex, how traumatic it could be. And I remember really being brokenhearted for her and her situation, what she was going through, and also being traumatized and scared. So a couple of years later, when I met the first love of my life, you know, the first big one, you guys remember your first love? And I was head over heels in love with this boy. I was 16, he was 17, and we ended up having sex. And I was so innocent and so naive, and this is gonna sound bizarre to most people. You're not gonna believe what I say. It sounds so messed up. But I literally still had a fantasy in my mind somewhere that he would be my forever love. We would get married, have children, live the rest of our lives in bliss, because I'd been so indoctrinated in this way. So a couple of months into the relationship, several months into the relationship, he dumped me. He dumped me. And my whole world came apart. I felt abandoned by God. I felt like trash. I felt like I'd broken my vow to God. Not only had I broken my vow to God, but I'd been abandoned, and I wasn't going to have my happily ever after. And I was really destroyed. And on top of all that, who could I talk to about it? My parents? My youth leader? One of my children had sex as a teenager, and when she shared with a youth leader for support, for love, for understanding, for help, she was stripped of her leadership position, and basically, all the love and service that she'd given to that church, all of that was taken away from her. It was extremely painful to her. And she wasn't given the support she needed for what she was going through. So that was where my depression started. And can you see how it really is, there was nothing wrong with me. What was wrong was the programming that I had received, and it caused the trauma, and it started from there. When I decided to leave the church in my mid-40s, when I left like a thief in the night. I was a worship leader in a mega church. I led worship for thousands of people. I taught in women's conferences and traveled and spoke. The church had been my family, my community, which is much of why I'm here creating the Judah family, as much for me as for anybody, because it was a deep sorrow for me to lose my spiritual family, a deep sorrow for me. So I slipped out the back door because I knew I was breaking bad. I knew that I was done. I knew that a lot of what was being said and done was not true for me anymore. It was misaligned. I knew it was, the end. And I also had the wisdom to understand that I couldn't debate with them or explain or justify or argue, because the fundamentalism was so strong and so hardened that it would have been a waste, right? And I would have only felt ashamed and looked down on, and they might have tried to talk me out of my points of view, but I was getting free and I was not going to look back. And about a year or two prior to that decision to leave the church, I left the church, I left my spiritual family, my job, which was in a Christian church, and my husband all at one time. I was gone. I did it all at once. Mom was breaking bad. That's what my son said. What happened before that, a couple of years before that, I was seeing Chuck for acupuncture because I had become chronically ill. My son had issues with addiction. He had begun to get in trouble. He was only 15, 16, 17 in that age range. He'd begun to get in a lot of trouble. And my heart was broken. My heart was broken. And I had gotten really sick as a result, and I'll have Chuck speak to this in a couple of minutes. I'd begun to get really sick as a result, and I couldn't get well. And I'd seen all the experts, and nobody could help me get well. And it's because my heart was broken, and no medicine will fix that. No medicine will fix that, yeah? And so after 9 months of being very sick and not able to recover with all the help of the doctors and so on, and I want to put a star, asterisk, exclamation points right here on this next little part of the story. I was at school one day. For 9 months at school, I'd been teaching first graders all day long, very sick with this sinus infection that was trapped and wouldn't go away, very sick. I was literally dragging myself into work every day for these 9 months. A mother stopped me. She said, one of my students, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, I've been sick all these months. I can't get well." She said, "You must go see Chuck Hipple." She insisted that I meet this man named Chuck Hipple. She gave me his number. She made sure that I went to go and see him right away. The reason I want to asterisk this part of the story is you never know what one very tiny, tiny little word that you speak to someone of kindness, of care, of compassion might change the trajectory of their whole entire life. If she had not stopped me in the foyer of the school that day and said to me, "Are you okay? You don't look like you feel well. Are you all right?" And then followed through to send me to see Chuck, that one tiny little act of kindness has changed the trajectory of my life. If it weren't for that, the Judah channel and all the tens of hundreds of thousands, literally at this point, we've probably had 500,000, almost 1 million people that have watched the Judah channel now and been impacted. Would have never happened. So I just want to say that, right, and print that on you. So I went to see Chuck as a patient and was healed right away. And one of the first things he said to me, he said, "Your body's stuck in fight or flight. We need to get you back in growth and repair so you can heal." And Chuck was a very a compassionate, loving, professional, boundaried healer for me for many years. Okay, before I ended up divorcing, and then later we became a thing in the love of my life. But just so you, I just want to say that, and acupuncture was a huge part of my awakening. It was actually my awakening because I was just this little Christian woman who was struggling with depression, and my husband was an alcoholic. And you know, all this was very on the low down. There was a lot of pain behind the scenes. I was in Al-Anon. My son also was really struggling with addiction, a lot of pain. And the church gave me everything they had with as much love and care as they could, but I was still in a lot of trouble. So when I began seeing Chuck and he was doing acupuncture, I got physically healed, and a few months in, he's like, "Well, you're doing great. You don't need to come back. Maybe just come in once a month for a tune-up." And I was like, "Heck no, are you kidding? I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. I'm going to keep coming." And he said, "Well, what do you want to work on?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, what would you think about spiritual acupuncture?" And he gave me a book, and I took it home, and I didn't understand it. It was like Greek to me, but I was like, I'm down for it. Whatever it is, something's happening to me. I was beginning to get my power back. I was beginning to set boundaries. I was beginning to sneak around and listen to NPR, and do things that were not cool in my religious circles. I was feeling, something cool happening, this freedom. I could kind of smell it. So I started coming every week for spiritual acupuncture. Now, my husband at the time was pitching a fit about me going to acupuncture. And I want to say that I would have never gone to acupuncture if I hadn't been desperate with my physical ailment, because I had been, again, taught that that kind of stuff was a recipe for getting demon possessed. Yeah. And so I was afraid. I was afraid of yoga, acupuncture, anything that kind of smelled of Eastern religion was very scary for me. But now that I was being healed and so on, and I was determined to keep going, well, my husband refused for me to pay for it, even though I worked full-time as a teacher and contribute all of my paycheck to the household income. He was just pitching a fit about the money for acupuncture. So I signed up some little students to teach piano to at the beginning of school, in the morning before school, and in the afternoon after school. And I earned extra money in order to pay for my acupuncture, and I kept going. And this was part of how the acupuncture was helping me to get my power back. Yeah? And so what is acupuncture all about? It's all about energy, right? It's all about energy. It's all about moving energy. It's all about freeing up repressed energy and trauma in the body. That's what we do in the Judah channel. Judah, when you are in Judah's presence, we are moving energy, and you feel it. It is physical, it is tangible, it is real, it is undeniable. We are moving repressed, stuck energy, sadness, pain, hurt, frustration, anger, trauma. We are moving this energy out of your body so you can be free of it and clearing it permanently from your field. And that's what Chuck was doing with his magic little needles. Okay, do you want to talk about, let me know when you're ready to.
What do you want me to talk about?
Okay, give me just a second, because what I want you to talk about, and then I'll tap you when I'm ready in just a moment.
Okay,
I want you to talk about the parasympathetic, and I want you to talk about trauma and how it lives in the body, how you move it out.
Okay. One at a time. Just it's easier if you ask me questions when you're ready.
Okay, all right. Now, in my mid-40s, after 2 or 3 years of this treatment from Chuck, as I said, I was breaking bad, right? I was getting out. I was ready to leave. Left my church, left my job in my Christian, left my community, because I knew that they weren't going to be people weren't going to let me be something different than what they knew me to be. And I was done with that. All that whole ego construct of good Christian girl, on everything that was involved, I was ready to be done with it. So I left. And as I left, my whole worldview collapsed. My entire worldview collapsed because it's all I had ever known from the time I was a little girl. And my body began to viscerally react. And suddenly I felt very unsafe in the world. I was allowing myself to go out in the world and be and do and be different. And so this appeared in my experience as complex PTSD. Okay? So even though I had never had symptoms like that before it had just been kind of this depression and anxiety, now I was in full on PTSD, right? So to give you an example of so for instance, as a married woman, I married at 19 because, right, that's what you do so that you're not sexually impure. You get married young and then you spend the rest of your life married. That's what I'd been taught. So as a married woman, I've been married my whole life pretty much, I would not allow myself to be alone in a room with a man, okay, and I would not get in the car and go somewhere else with a man unless my husband was in the car with me. This is kind of how strict the rules, the rigidness that I had in my inner being, all this control in my inner being so that I wouldn't screw up and ruin my relationship with God, right? So when I began to break loose of all that, my body was just, my nervous system felt really in this heightened state of alert all the time. And it was reacting viscerally. Okay, so this is where you could jump in if you want.
What's the question?
Talk about trauma, how it lives in the body, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the sympathetic nervous system. If you can, and if you can't, that's okay.
The eyes take 80% of your energy, so that's why you close them when you sleep, and so that I'm only partly in my body. That's why my eyes want to stay closed. So there's two states the body can be in at any one time: growth and repair, fight or flight, parasympathetic, sympathetic. So the way we were built is that we see a bear, we go into parasympathetic, fight or flight, and when we do this, The blood from our internal organs goes to our arms and legs, because we're either going to have to run or fight. The blood in our brain goes to, from the forebrain, which is where our intelligence is, this is what we have that animals don't have, to the hindbrain, the animal brain, because we don't need to think, we just need to act. So you see a bear, you run into your cabin. Once you get in the cabin, take a few deep breaths, back into growth and repair. So there's several, the things that can cause you to get stuck in fight or flight. One, a severe event, like all these soldiers that came back from Vietnam, being shot at, shooting people, seeing all the blood and guts. So they get stuck in fight or flight because they're in fight or flight because they're going out and hunting people and being hunted. So they're in fight or flight long enough and they get stuck in it. Having multiple things happen. I had this one patient of mine call me up about her 12-year-old girl. She got sick 3 months in a row, and then she got COVID, and it had been 2 months, and she couldn't get well. They put her in the hospital, and the hospital said, we don't know, there's nothing we can do. And so she said, can you help her? And I said, sure, she's stuck in fight or flight. So what happened is getting into fight or flight so many times, her unconscious mind says, we better just stay in fight or flight, because this keeps happening. So she gets stuck in it. So I did the treatment to unstick her, and she was fine within 24 hours. So a major event or a series of events can do it. And COVID long haulers were people that were stuck in fight or flight. And I cured a lot of them by unsticking them. So that's what happens. And because God didn't make us to live in this kind of stress. And under normal circumstances, we might go into fight or flight, maybe once a week or something, see a snake or a bear or something. But because of work, because of the stress, because a lot of companies we work for feel like they have to create fear in us in order to get us to respond and produce. And then just traffic and the news, of course, the news just tries to get fear into us. And so fear puts us in fight or flight. So that's what's happening, and if somebody gets stuck in fight or flight long enough, they will get sick, because when you're in fight or flight, it's not about healing. When you're running away from that bear, your brain doesn't say, let's heal that stomach ache right now. It says, no, we got to run away from that bear. So all the energy is going to that. So when you're stuck in fight or flight, the energy is not going towards healing. And if you stay that way long enough, then the person will start to get more severe diseases, including cancer.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to take a break and say goodbye to our live stream audience, and then we're going to do some healing around this. Thank you, dear. So I began to develop this PTSD as I broke out of everything that I knew to be safe in the world. Yeah. Imagine being taught that alcohol is dangerous, smoking is dangerous, dancing is dangerous, rock music is dangerous, unsaved people are dangerous because they'll cause you to lose your if you get in with them, right, you'll end up losing your religion or your relationship with God. So I began to develop, yeah, babe?
Can I just say something?
Oh, please, yeah, go ahead.
So, if all the energy in your body is moving smoothly and completely unblocked, that is absolute total health. All disease is caused by blocked energy. And depression is in the word depressed. What's depressed? The energy. So what happens is, if you look at like emotions, you have this circle here, and you have love, you have hate, you have fear, you have joy, you have all the different emotions on this circle. And life, that's a wheel. And life is that wheel just keeps going around. Here comes love, here comes hate, here comes anger, okay? And as long as you express it, then you move on to the next one. When you repress one, here